Welcome to the Life Science Success Podcast. My name is Don. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a consultant in life sciences. I help companies manage complexity and increase performance. So before we get into today's topic and start talking to Ross Youngs, I just wanted to quickly mention again, I have a life science maturity assessment for organizations in life sciences. You could take the maturity assessment for your organization to understand some of the complexities and challenges you might have in terms of scaling the organization. I also wanted to just mention today that we are going to have a special broadcast on the 30th of December, and I'm going to be talking with Chris Connor from the Life Sciences Marketing Radio podcast about top podcasts of 2022. So I hope that you can come and join us on the 30th. I know it's as many people are wrapping up the end of the year, and so just wanted to leave that with you as well. So in this episode of Life Science Success, my guest is Ross Youngs. Ross is the CEO and founder of Biosortia Pharmaceutical. They're working to provide previously unobtainable drug-like small molecules from microbiomes. So welcome, Ross.
Well, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, we were talking just before things switched over. The weather has really switched, here in the last 24 hours in Colorado. We went from 50 degrees yesterday afternoon to my wife was, out and about just in the evening hours, and it was -8. So I was completely blown away by what the bomb cyclone delivered for Colorado. So I know you're in Ohio yourself, and things are headed your way. So please stay safe.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And you guys too. With those temperatures, that's dangerous.
Yeah. Well, we made sure, because I have another house that I take care of as well, and we made sure that the thermostat was set there for whenever the bomb cyclone arrives, because it's actually near Chicago, so they're going to get hit pretty hard, and same sort of thing. So would you mind telling the listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. I'm one of those generalists in the life science fields. So my background's environmental science and industrial engineering. I worked in the medical imaging business, worked in the video and optical disc business in processing and engineering. And then I started my own company in 1988. And that company was based on products in and around the optical and video disc world. And I went on to hit the Inc. 500 5 years in a row. So one of the fastest growing companies, privately held companies in the U.S. for a period of 5 years. So we actually made the Inc. magazine's Hall of Fame. And then in 1998, I got named the nation's business person of the year. And that was an award that was held in Washington, D.C., and it was Al Gore that gave me that award. We went on from there creating other technologies and other products focused on bioplastics. So when I say I've got a diverse background, it goes across the engineering process and even into advancing early new stage technologies. It was what we were doing in the bioplastics that took us to biofuels, an ARPA-E grant, a DARPA follow-on, a U.S. Air Force grant. And ultimately, we figured out how to do something nobody in the world has ever figured out that's going to have the biggest impact on life sciences and new products across the board that's ever occurred. And I have a high confidence level of that. And I think I mentioned before the broadcast, we're talking about something that has never been trained in academia and never practiced by industry because everyone thinks it's impossible.
Yeah, well, a lot of things that happen in this industry to me, and I tell people all the time, look, I'm not a bench scientist either. I'm somebody that, truly focuses in on the business side and operations, but at the same time, I'm amazed by a lot of the stuff that the scientists can make happen, with our body. And I think the COVID vaccine was one of the best examples of that exact technology. So, to train a body to all of a sudden see something that it couldn't see before, is absolutely amazing to me as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about what made you found Biosortia Pharmaceuticals? I mean, you touched on a little bit. It was kind of a journey, right? But at the same time, what made you sort of stop there and say, "Hey, look, this is something that we absolutely have to work on."
Yeah, it really was that pursuit into bioplastics and advanced products from microbes. So we started to look at microbes as a source of products. And when we did, the biggest problem to solve was getting microbes efficiently and effectively out of what would be a dilute solution. That was the problem labeled by the Department of Energy. Typical methodologies were around $3,500 per ton. And a technology that we invented, which really uses very low pressure, and it uses, in essence, biomimicry to separate liquids from solids, even on a microscopic scale, turned out to be so efficient that it opened up the door and our eyes to other opportunities. Our cost, and one of the reasons the technology originally was called transformational by the Advanced Research Projects Agency of the DOE, was because we brought that cost of $3,500 down to $1.92 projected. Now, that's orders of magnitude improvement. Now, what that ended up doing is what we ended up finding out is that ultimately we were collecting whole microbiomes from a particular natural site in a way that we were preserving the microbes. Today, we've advanced that technology for other generations. And today we can pull an entire microbiome out of a aquatic habitat, and that includes the viruses, and we can do so without damaging any of the cells. And then we start preservation in minutes. In fact, it's 2 minutes of 14 seconds we start preservation. That means we're taking a snapshot of a living, breathing microbiome in the aquatic habitat. And this is the important fact, that aquatic habitat overlaps our gut microbiome by more than 73% genes and metabolic pathways, meaning the secrets of what's going on within the human microbiome, the actual chemistry that turns things on, off, up, or down, will be directly accessible, not indirectly accessible. And I like to point out when I talk to people about why we went into this is today we are understanding so much more about the microbiome and how it impacts the human. And I'm sure this audience is well aware of that, but there may be a few people that are not. And that is, we're outnumbered by the microbes versus our human cells, 40 trillion to 30 trillion. And we're dominated genomically, more than 25 million genes of our own microbiome versus the 23,000 genes of the human. Now, how that works out in the human is in our blood, 90% of the signaling small molecules come from our gut microbiome. Tens of thousands of small molecules turning things on, off, up, or down. And that could be inflammation, that could be neurodegenerative diseases. It's certainly infectious diseases. We're finding out it relates to everything. But with all of science's past technologies, direct, indirect, culturing, genomics, synthetic biology, we only know what 140 of these tens of thousand molecules are. That's an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the journey of sequencing DNA was similar, right? I mean, at least in terms of the story that I remember, which is that, they used to think that RNA was the junk that, was inside of our DNA. And then they found out how absolutely important RNA, as well is. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, in terms of the things that you're working on at Biosortia, what more focused things should we expect that would come out of Biosortia?
As a platform, our goal is to work with people to bring these new opportunities to light. So when you think about what these molecules could represent, and I've got this, and that is that small molecules are really the least common denominator. They even make DNA, they even slice and dice DNA. So these are the kind of molecules that travel through the body, through the blood brain barrier, uh, penetrate cells. These are what hit targets. And that's been historically proven because of the 19,000 drugs that are on the shelf today, 90% of them are small molecules. So there's a reason small molecules are so sought after. What this will create as an opportunity is not only potentially cures or treatments, but it will uh, really show opportunities and targets and markers as well. So when we execute our platform, we plan on working with 400 research groups simultaneously, bringing them the opportunity to look at these massive amount of unknown small molecules made by microbes, which are the best cell-to-cell signaling sources for microbes or for biology. And doing that, that means we can work with a group that's trying to find, let's say, modulators for cytokines or new opportunities in neuro-CNS or infectious disease. And that's one of the things that we're already doing with some groups moving forward, and we hope to accelerate that dramatically this year. We think we'll be able to execute at scale this year, and that's what's critical. That will allow us to get our molecules in the hands of researchers. Now, one thing I can say that we've learned is we may double the knowledge of unknown small molecules that come from microbes in one harvest of a microbiome. And someone could say, there's lots of unknown molecules. Virtually anybody that's ever done a deep LC-MS, MS of a mixed biomass like that sees all these molecules, but they can't identify them. And we like to talk about why we have such a massive advantage. I like to point out that in a lab, at a lab bench, when you're talking about an area, a 150 milliliter sample is a big sample. When we talk about industrial scale microbiome mining, we're talking about 200 million times this sample size. And that is one of the reasons we can get at sub part per trillion small molecules in microbiomes, pull them out, have enough quantity to interrogate via assays and even start preclinical. This is opening the door to the actual molecules nature has, and that's the advantage.
Yeah, I'm impressed first of all that you have a vial there of fluid that you could use as a visual example, but yeah, I mean, as a as somebody that definitely wants to see us do things at scale as well, it definitely does sound like you've got something that people should pay interest to as well. So in terms of scale, I think you touched a little bit on this a second ago, but just wanted to make sure that that we've fully sort of gone into this. If organizations wanted to reach out to you today, are you able to help and scale to meet the demands of people that are looking for an organization like yours?
That's a great question because a lot of times people are stuck in a technology area where they can't execute. We have built the technology to acquire microbiomes from the natural world at scale without acquiring sludge, making sure that we're snapshotting what is actually going on. The aquatic environment is so incredibly diverse that we can actually choose where we go and typically for what reasons. So that was the big, tough technological curve. We've even done harvesting in marine sanctuaries off the coast of California near La Jolla under state, federal, and local approval. It's a completely environmental approach to obtain a microbiome. It doesn't even impact any habitat. That's another good thing about it. But what we can do is everything down the line is off the shelf. So when you talk about bringing a microbiome of this kind of scale, there's complexity. So it has to be processed at an industrial scale, not at a lab benchtop scale. This would overwhelm 100 lab benchtops. But when you process things effectively at an industrial scale, you can slice and dice and get at this unknown material and present it to be researched. And that's the key thing. Everything we need for this next step is off the shelf. So with the right engagement, the right desire to engage, we'll be able to move forward rapidly. That's why I say I have confidence that there's a combination of things that are occurring. And that is the understanding of the microbiome is nearly a vertical curve right now. It is, if you look in books or if you look in scientific papers and you look up the word microbiome, it's amazing what has been happening in that field and the number of researchers that are paying attention. The other thing that's happening is all other technologies have failed to deliver. And I hate to put it that way, but when you're dealing with indirect technologies, there are gaps in information that need to be closed. So when I look at genomics and I talk about synthetic biology and we say that was a promise of the early 1990s and billions of dollars have been spent annually. But if we look, the cost of drug development has gone up 300% in 10 years, yet the pipelines of real new products has actually gone down. It's unfortunate, but there's reasons for this. There needs to be a connection between real data and what would be indirect capability to understand that real data. And that's one of the big reasons why machine learning and AI will also be left in the dark. You have got to have enough real data to do machine learning and AI. What we bring to the table by uncovering tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of small molecules directly from biological signaling is certainly we'll know the genomics, we'll know the metabolic pathways, we'll know the gene clusters, but then there's the firewall of what does it actually make?
Right.
And what is it doing? So activity and what these molecules are. This firewall between genomics and synthetic biology and what's going on in real nature will crumble rapidly. And that's why people in learning AI, synthetic biology ought to pay attention to where this technology is going to go. We're a first mover. Nobody has ever been taught to industrial scale microbiome mine in any academic course, and industry has never practiced it. This is revolutionary because people thought it was too complex and too impossible to do, and there was no reason to do it. And what we now know is there's massive reasons to pull this together. And what I will say is 10 years after we start executing, and I'm sure there will be many other groups that will follow, I believe more new products in therapeutics and life sciences in general, including agrochemical sustainability, will come from industrial scale mining the microbiome than all other technologies combined. Now, that's a pretty bold statement, but I actually have data to support it. Now, someone could say, how could you have data to support it? The golden age of pharmaceuticals was driven by culturing microbes. And even today, 50% of the products on the shelf in therapeutics have a indirect, direct, or inspirational path to microbes. And we can only culture 1%. Now we have access to potentially what could be the full 100%. Why wouldn't I draw that line and say this will be the most productive way to solve humanity's life science problems?
I love it whenever those really challenging statements come up as well, because I mean, to me, it's an opportunity for people to have a look, right, and sort of challenge their own thinking as well, and anybody that really believes in the scientific method, I think understands it's not about staying where you are. It's about sort of questioning some of the beliefs and trying to figure out exactly how do we advance things along as well. It's funny that you mentioned AI, because I just came from a health conference earlier this week. Was out in Las Vegas with a group of individuals as well in healthcare, and I mean they were all more or less banking a lot on artificial intelligence providing a lot of information, and a lot of support for healthcare, which is possible, but at the same time, as you've rightly said, I mean, it takes understanding and being able to train artificial intelligence as well to be able to leverage it. So it's not just stick some algorithm in and let it figure stuff out for you. You have to sort of put the initial brain power in as well.
You're exactly right. One of the things I'll say is starting with good data makes the outcome much better. And when we have potentially 8 billion synthetically created molecules plus that don't work in nature, but yet that's the database, and only 19,000 approved drugs and 25,000 small molecules from microbes that are real and well annotated between 200 and 500 molecular weight, the real data is lacking. What I believe industrial scale microbiome mining will do is a Moore's curve type growth in knowledge, meaning what we know about cell to cell signaling molecules and why microbes are so important, because everything evolved from it. And quite frankly, whether it was vertical or horizontal gene transfer, every chemical signaling has a relationship back to microbes. We're talking about doubling the knowledge in this area just because industrial scale microbiome mining, probably every 2 years for decades and decades, and maybe even faster.
Amazing. So, where do you believe that the biggest opportunities lie in life sciences?
I think it's actually bringing life sciences into a area where technologies can be cross fertilized. In this field, from what I've seen as a generalist, the life science industry benefits greatly from specialization. And that specialization is really powerful. But there's also this is my area, this is my focus. I don't want to really call it ego, but people want to have control.
Mm.
And the reality of it is, when you talk about cross functional teams, and when you talk about teaming, and when you try to really solve big problems, it really takes a diverse thought process to get there. And that's not just people of diverse backgrounds, but it's different technological skills where people don't go, oh, my skill's the best, your skill's kind of useless. The reality of it is Harvard Business Review did a publication years ago that talked about where does breakthrough innovation come from. 50% of it comes from the specialist. 50% of it comes from the generalist. Where are the generalists and the impact on life sciences and the leadership on life sciences? I don't see it. I'm not that visible to everything, but I don't see it. I see boards that have been trained to do things. I see executives that have been trained to do things. And if it's a generalist executive, they're required to pass along decisions to their scientific people. When you're talking about a scientist that's running a research organization, they're always a PhD. They always have a specialty, and they got hired for the specialty. How in the world could they stretch outside that specialty? They may go, no, I'm a generalist. No, you're not a generalist. You're actually a specialist, and you're really good at what you do. And the problem is some of the financial managers run large companies. They look at themselves as a generalist. They're not. They're a specialist in finance.
Mm.
And there's a real tough capability of bringing in diversity of thought within organizations to solve major problems. And that's the challenge. Scientific principle is one of those things in the way. Now, I'm a firm believer in scientific principle where it is absolutely applicable, but it is not applicable on every thought until the right time.
Yeah, so I have a couple of thoughts there. I mean, one, I mean, in terms of running a business, the conversation I generally have is one with entrepreneurs or very early stage companies focusing in on kind of getting to that next level. And one of the things that I continually tell them is you can either work on your innovation or you can work on running your business. Which one is more important for hitting the finish line? For entrepreneurs in life sciences, it's working on their innovation. It's working, in that versus focusing in on how do I build teams? How do I, sort of make sure the HR is running? How do I take control of payroll and those sort of things? And to me, that's where, this idea of virtual COO services kind of, came from, which is what my consulting business is built off of. Now, the opposite side, in terms of exactly what you're saying with the specialization, I have seen generalists in life sciences outside of companies. The moment that they sort of focus in on whatever it is that they're going to deliver, now all of a sudden they have to be specialized because of what it is that they're going to deliver. And what I hear you also say is, hey, even though you're trying to specialize or you're trying to deliver a cancer therapy or whatever the end science might be, the other thought is to take a little bit of a broader look as well. Don't just, put your head down and sort of focus on the one thing, because you actually might miss other opportunities along the way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've been successful in my history because I seek information that's impactful. And in my own organizations, we've always had a attitude of absolute fearlessness. We want people to engage. We've got this whole set of guiding principles to make a functional team, and we work hard at trying to build a functional team. This is something that I don't see, but I'm not deep into life science management. I'm on the surface. And the idea I'll throw out to you that helps me make this indication is I have talked over the last 12 years to hundreds and hundreds of people that are deep into the weeds in life sciences. And there's always barriers for them to achieve. Um, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people that said during a BD meeting, we're only looking for a de-risk asset. That
Yeah.
de-risk asset is all we want.
Yeah.
And that's what they've been charged with. How in the world can they even think outside of that? They can't. Should they? Well, they're the ones doing the outreach. Management above them should empower them to bring something other than that up the line. But they're pretty well put in a box. And that's just one example. And
Yeah.
I can understand why it's important for some things to be put in boxes. I've run successful manufacturing companies. We've done successful research and development. Certainly there's the right time in the right places, but you can't just shut down opportunity completely. You got to find a way to make things bubble up. Otherwise, where's the leadership going to come from? Most good ideas come from outside. And you can look at somebody like Apple and you could say they executed, they did brilliantly, but they also really never invented anything specifically. They
Right.
always took other things and took it to a whole different level.
Yeah, I sort of did this earlier on in my career. I did an in-depth analysis of innovators versus individuals who leverage innovation, right? Which to me, that's what Apple is. They're somebody not who typically innovates. They're somebody who oftentimes leverages other people's innovation, and the similarly, I mean, if I come back to life sciences and in what you just talked about a moment ago, the as I think about like the earlier stage companies and where they oftentimes can flex and adapt to match what the bigger industrial partner might need or want. And then if you get later stage, if you get further down the road, and all of a sudden you have something that is an asset, that asset is only as good as being able to deliver whatever it was designed originally for. And so it becomes more challenging, I think, to be able to just pick up something and go use it then. But that's just my outsider's view again. It's the you have an opportunity, I guess, if I were to come back to, let's say, baked goods for a second, you have an opportunity to tell the baker, hey, look, I want a chocolate cake with X amount of layers and this kind of frosting and so on and so on. Once it's done, it's done. It's there on the shelf. And then so many times, larger companies will come back and they say, I like 90% of this thing, but I'd like to change 10%. Well, changing 10% again causes kind of this whole cascade of work that has to happen.
Yeah. And I think that when you talk about being able to visualize something that you haven't been trained in life sciences, it's really tough. I mean, you spend an entire career learning a specialty and getting more specialized in order to be published, to be respected, and to get grants. So it's all about narrowing in. And the reality is that there's a lot of problems that could be solved by solutions that come from outside the life sciences that are never interrogated in any way because that's not what's been trained. And I'll give you an example related specifically to industrial scale microbiome mining. If you talk about collecting microbes at a massive scale in order to see what those hidden small molecules are doing, what industries out there do similar things? And it is true. The metals industry, when it comes to collecting gold or lithium or anything, they're not using technologies like life sciences use to find the secrets or to find the materials. They're going out there, and in gold industry, I've learned that if they can assay a rock and find out quartz or granite that it has 4 grams of gold per ton, they will grind up that entire ton, and that's economically viable for them to grind up rock and extract it. We wouldn't go searching for lithium, a measuring cup in the backyard. And if we find it, we're not going to use a measuring cup to extract it. We're talking about something that probably should have been focused on 60 years ago. There were issues that needed to be overcome to do what we're doing today. And they're actually fairly tough issues. But when you figure a small organization like ours, with $22 million invested, both dilute and non-dilute, we've been able to solve the problem of getting at molecules nobody else in the world can even begin to imagine are there because of scale. Why didn't that happen? It didn't happen because we focused in the life science world of understanding what something about less, not understanding something about more. Now, granted, we also didn't understand the microbiome and its impact on all of life sciences, let alone the human. We're talking about knowledge that has just arrived on the scene, and that is this area of life sciences is really important to all of biology and especially to humans. So you got to kind of combine all the knowledge to say there's a justification. I would say most organizations in life sciences are behind this particular curve and this trend, which will be so impactful. We'll see how fast it develops at this point. I would say rapidly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some, I mean, there's just some great research that's happening around the microbiome and you know, like we were talking about before the show, I'm hoping that you know, I can be a connection point for you as well. And so that brings us to the last three questions that I like to ask every guest, Ross. What inspires you?
Interestingly enough, I used to walk around my manufacturing facility when we were doing optical disc products, and I would see people upset at the moment over something. And I'd put my hands on their shoulders. And let's say I was talking to Gus. Gus, we're not curing cancer here. We're making a product for the optical disc world. Let's put it in perspective. And now I'm in a business that may actually impact people's lives and may change humanity. The vision of where we're at, knowing we've grabbed something that was never conceived or practiced or used, is so powerful. I want to see this thing move forward and I want to see humanity benefit from what these secrets are. And I would say every aspect of current life sciences, whether it is the advancing machine learning or AI, whether it is genomics, whether it is synthetic chemistry or biology, will all benefit from these secrets being uncovered. And the opportunity to create new products, advance new products, find starting points for therapeutics is massive. And I cannot wait till we have that impact.
Thank you for sharing that. And what concerns you?
What concerns me is when you do something different, it can take a long time. I ask people, when do they think the first electric vehicle was proven on the road viable? And a lot of people say, oh, about 100 years ago. It was 1835. And here we are moving into the electric vehicle revolution. There were many barriers. But imagine if humanity picked that technology in 1835 and advanced it and not the fossil fuel industry that has powered the automobiles and the climate crisis and everything else we're dealing with today. And a lot of health crisis because of what we have put in the air. So to me, I fear adoption of a technology that'll be so powerful, but many of the people walking around today will never benefit from it. That's my fear.
Yeah, well, I mean, to that very point, one of the reasons why, you know, I've found it so important to continue this podcast is this idea that companies like yours or companies that are investigating new drugs or whatever go through multiple valleys of death. And in this podcast and in the things that we oftentimes share, one of the things that, you know, I think should always be in the back of everybody's mind is the fact that the entrepreneur that is always on the other side of the camera, unless they're in a large pharmaceutical company, you know, today, or a medical device company, you know, working on things, they are facing, you know, certain challenges of adoption and certain challenges of, just the natural sort of process of development as well. And those multiple valleys of death, any one of them could cause the company to not exist. And that not existing means that, what, the best cancer therapy may not arrive ever, because of the fact that we let it run out of gas, and essentially said, hey, look, this one wasn't viable, let's continue on. Was it not viable because it didn't have enough dollars, or was it not viable because it was proven scientifically that to not be something worth investing in? So, to me, this the mention of this idea that, hey, look, adoption, is something that has to be looked at, but also the speed of adoption inside of healthcare in general is a slow process in my experience as well.
Don, you're spot on. It was probably 30 years ago, talking to MBA classes in Ohio State. One of the things I would say about my own business at the time, the one that hit the Inc. 500 5 years in a row, is I would say the average entrepreneur will face death of their company 7 times before they're successful. I would probably say in the life science world, it may be less because they don't have the opportunity to face it. The reality, you might face it more, but
Yeah,
it takes incredible tenacity, determination, and belief and focus to achieve. And in this world, that is actually challenged in so many ways.
absolutely. Last question: what excites you?
What excites me is getting up every day and trying hard to make a go of something that right now, probably even in the life science world, less than 1% have ever heard nor understand about industrial scale microbiome mining and what the heck that could mean and what that could mean to humanity. So I'm on a mission, and that is, one, I've got to educate. Two, I've got to be able to find partners, collaborators, people that will join me in this mission. I've got to find investors. So I get up every day going, I have a mission and I want to achieve it. I'm very motivated to achieve it. In the last 2 weeks, I spent a week in Washington at the Milken Health Summit there. Got to meet a lot of good people, got to talk about the story. Last week, I was at a national lab and presented to over 60 investigators that only one of them in that room had heard about it. But since that point of time, every single one of them wants to work with us, and they're already starting to conceive grant applications. So we're exciting people about this, and that's motivating to me. I want to see this thing through to success, and I'll push until I can.
Well, thank you so much, Ross, for coming and sharing the story of your company, and also just talking a little bit more about this sort of challenges that you faced as well in terms of adoption, but also, I think this is the right place and the right time with regards to the microbiome and a lot of the technology that we have, and a lot of the people that I'm hearing are actively working on several of these problems as well. And so hopefully we'll see even more and exponential growth as well here in the short term.
Don, thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, thanks a lot.